This episode of The Therapy Show is sponsored by Therapy Notes. Why not find out what more than 100,000 mental health professionals already know and try Therapy Notes for 2 months absolutely free? Just click on the link in the show notes or enter promo code LISA at therapynotes.com. Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Today, I have a special guest with me, and she's not just a group practice owner, but also a consultant and the soulful voice behind the podcast Soul Care for Therapists. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Dawn Gabriel. Dawn's passion isn't just limited to therapy. She's on a mission to help therapists dive deeper into their spirituality and faith, ensuring they lead sustainable lives both in and out of their practice. And she believes that for therapists to truly transform lives, they too need a sacred space to rejuvenate and let go. And it's not all work and no play for Dawn. So picture this: a serene Colorado trail, a book in one hand, a cup of chai in the other, and maybe later a deep conversation over a glass of wine. That's Dawn for you, always seeking depth, whether she's with her husband and 2 boys on an adventure or just taking a moment for herself. And in this episode, Dawn discusses the therapist matrix, how she developed it, and how it can help us be better therapists. But before we hear from Dawn, are you looking for continuing education contact hours? Want to learn while you're on the move? Because for a limited time, you can grab 15 NBCC approved contact hours for just $30. And you can explore all the pod courses over at lisamustard.com/pod courses, or just click the link in the show notes. But go ahead and buy the pod course bundle today, because you will enjoy future pod courses added to your bundle at zero extra charge to you. Act fast, as the bundle price is about to go up soon. I'm in the process of crafting an ethics pod course set to launch this fall. Ensure you seize this opportunity. Are you curious about pod courses? Okay, imagine a podcast blended with a self-study course. Listen at your convenience, and when you're set, take the brief quiz, finish the pod course assessment, and claim your certificate of completion. Once again, you can see the pod courses over at lisamustard.com/pod courses. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am thrilled to have Dawn Gabriel on the show this week. Welcome. It's so great to have you.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. And I want to share that I was on your podcast actually recently. So when you hear this one, you'll go and check out the episode that I was on Dawn's show, and we'll put the link in the show notes for you guys to check that out. But Dawn, can you share with our listeners like who you are, what you do, and how you help therapists?
Yes. So I'm Dawn Gabriel. I have been a therapist for almost 20 years now, and a group practice owner for the past 8 years. And I have worked in the whole spectrum of mental health, in community. I've worked in jails, I've worked in psych hospitals, residential homes, and then I finally landed on running my own practice, which I love. And then a few years ago, I actually jumped into the consulting world and started Soul Care for Therapists, which is more consulting, retreats, and a podcast called Soul Care for Therapists. So I do a lot of work with integrating holistic and spirituality into your work as a therapist.
Oh, very cool. I'm really curious. How did you decide to go into private practice and then group practice?
Yes. Well, let's see. So working in a lot of really stressful community mental health places like a psych hospital, a jail, and teen residential home, um, just noticing the burnout.
Yeah.
And I also had not started my family yet. And I was working in a psych hospital, and I thought, I don't think I can get pregnant in this atmosphere. Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
was so stressed. And so when I was starting my family planning, I was older when I started family. I was 37, and then later 41 when I had
Mhm.
my kids. So I decided I have to do private practice because I have control over my own schedule. And yeah, so that's how I started, with just a few hours after work. So I
Right.
was working full time and then seeing clients in the evenings.
Very cool. And so would you say that your private practice took off pretty quickly once you kind of got the ball rolling, or how did that go for you?
Yeah, well, because I only needed to I saw like 5 to 10 well, yeah, 5 to 8 clients, but then, we kind of all were then actually, I had a nurse practitioner from the hospital. She said, "Why don't you come with me? I'm gonna start a group practice." So I actually joined her group practice, and they took insurance and they filled us up. And so that was fast and quick. However, right after I had my son, it was like he was 6 weeks old. I come back in to say hi to everyone, and she fired all the therapists.
What?
Yes, and she said, "You guys aren't seeing enough clients," which we were, but in a psychiatrist's mind, they see clients every 20 minutes.
Right.
And I was like, "You can't have us see 40 clients a week. That's not possible for our well-being." And she just let us all go.
Right.
And so within a week, we all bonded together and started our own group practice, just kind of sharing space. It wasn't like an official group practice. We just kind of shared. And then 3 years after that, a lot of people were moving and I decided to start my own group practice. And so that was a little slow because I didn't hire a consultant. I didn't know. And
Hmm.
so for the first 3 years, I really struggled with a group practice, but just thought, "Oh, this is fun. We'll just all see clients together." But I didn't know what I was doing. But I say year 3 to 8, I hired some consultants, really got my business together, and it was way better.
Nice. Oh gosh, man. I have so many thoughts on that whole situation that you found yourself in with that nurse practitioner. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
I know, but
Well,
it's a
and
fun story.
it is. No, I mean, like we could probably have do a whole podcast on that. But what I would like for you to share with our listeners is what is this therapist matrix all about? You have me so curious. So I'm trying to imagine what that is. And before I think of what's his face, Keanu Reeves and plugging in or unplugging, how would you?
No, it's so true.
Yeah. Well, tell us what this therapy matrix is and how did you come up with it?
Yes. Well, I think I've always worked with therapists, as you can tell, whether it's been in community mental health or then even in private practice, I've always been around a lot of therapists and been in some type of leadership role. And so after 20 years working with therapists, I started to notice years ago some themes. And I was like, why can we be so high functioning on the outside or look high functioning, but people still have a ton of stuff internally that they're not dealing with as a therapist? Because we're kind of a lot of times we're better at working with other people than we are with ourselves and putting our own like skills to work with ourselves. And we just like let it go. And
Right.
so
So
I
true.
was,
I'm thinking
I
of some
know.
some people right now. I'm like blown away by this. Okay, keep going. Tell us more.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was actually in a group and I had a good friend and we were talking about this of
Mhm.
we don't really talk about it with anyone because
Mhm.
we have some crazy stuff going on. And she said it's kind of like the a matrix. And in my head, I went to the movie
Mhm.
and I was like, yeah, once you take what is it, the red or the blue pill, you
Right.
can't go back.
Right.
It's so that's what I started, but she was actually talking about a literal matrix, which I'll explain in a minute. But it is my first theory was you can't unsee and unhear the things that we have heard and seen and sat with. We carry so many people's stories. And I know we say we can let it go, but you just can't unsee and unhear. And so it affects the way we deal with life.
Mhm.
And so there's different layers to therapist that I developed this tool called the therapist matrix assessment tool because it helps you look at all the layers.
Mhm.
It kind of calls you on all the crap that you're used to throwing out and looking good with your mask on. And it helps you look at all the different layers and roles and dual relationships, not with clients, but with each other. Like especially if you're a group practice owner, there's so many dual relationships that you have to deal with.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like all the hats we wear, and it's
Sure.
kind of pulling that apart, looking at it and trying to find a holistic, balanced way to kind of move forward and be better people.
Yeah. So how do you promote this to your staff or to your the therapists that work with you? I mean, is it because I'm imagining like walking in and saying, okay, staff meeting, we're all going to take a look at this therapist matrix. And I could just see like pushback and like, who do you think you are coming in here? And that might just be like the world that I work in. So how do you like quote unquote sell it to the folks that you work with? Does that make
I
sense? Like,
u
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I usually share a lot of real stories. I'm known for being pretty authentic. And so I share some of my failures as a therapist, as a group practice owner, just well, and I share other stories. Like there were so many times that I was working with someone, and again, they're running a successful private practice, but yet then I would hear, "Oh, I'm going through I just got divorced." And I'm like, "How did I not know you were going through a divorce?" Or, "Oh, one person, my ex burned my house down."
Mhm.
Or, I had another like, just so many things going on that were so heavy, and I'm like, "Why aren't we talking about this?" And so, I promote an atmosphere of vulnerability and authenticity in my practice, and when I'm speaking, I usually start with a big story that
I got you.
kinda shows and I kind of unpack, here's all the different roles I had to manage while dealing with this one issue,
Mhm.
and I wanna give us ways on how to get a better handle, kind of like a grounding and a regulation tool on how to work with our own emotions and putting ourselves first and allowing that to be okay. And so that's where I usually start. And then the assessment is just a way to kind of, it's like a self reflection tool. So they can
Cool.
do it on their own time too.
Oh, nice. So it is a tool that you work through on your own, and then does it give you, like what type of results can you get from it?
Yeah, it's more of a reflective tool. So it's
Okay.
not like it spits out, this is where you're at. We do talk about burnout. We also look at your propensity for burnout, but the tool actually goes through different hats. So, for example, you're a therapist, you're also probably a partner,
Mm.
you're also, some people are parents, some people have, there's friends, community members, any role you have, and it kind of, you go through each role and you kind of rank them. Do you feel like you live in fear or abundance?
Mm.
Are you, and it's a continuum, and you kind of mark on yourself where you feel like you show up in the world, in your world specifically. So, like as a boss, also it looks at a boss, like, or community. How would you describe the community you have around you? Do you have safe people you can be vulnerable with and who can do the same with you? And then you look, are you connected or disconnected? Surviving or thriving? Autopilot or intentional? So you kind of go through and you rank yourself, and then you can kind of see these are the areas I need work. These are the areas I'm doing fine with.
Try Therapy Notes, the #1 rated electronic health record system available today. With live telephone support 7 days a week, it's clear why Therapy Notes is rated 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and Google. Therapy Notes makes billing, scheduling, note taking, and telehealth incredibly easy. And now, for all you prescribers out there, Therapy Notes is proudly introducing ePrescribe. And if you're coming from another electronic health record, Therapy Notes makes the transition quite simple, importing your demographic data free of charge so you can get going right away. So why not find out what more than 100,000 mental health professionals already know and try Therapy Notes for 2 months absolutely free. Just click on the link in the show notes or enter the promo code Lisa at therapynotes.com. Try it today with no strings attached and see why everyone is switching to Therapy Notes. Okay. Okay, cool. And so is this something that a person can work through on their own, or does it need to be kind of facilitated by you? How does it do you get it out there?
Yeah. I actually will have, I have a downloadable that they can work on their own. I think it's better with like a therapist. I mean, I feel like it's organic, so it's going to be an ongoing assessment,
Mhm.
but the original snapshot they can work on their own and then probably take that into counseling, a spiritual director, friends. It's kind of like a roadmap of, this is how I want to get better.
I
But
gotcha.
yeah, I'll have a downloadable for your listeners.
Oh,
They
great.
can download it.
Okay.
And there's directions and everything.
Oh, sweet. Okay, so we will put the link in the show notes for y'all to grab the therapist matrix. Is this something that you could apply to other, I mean, I'm guessing you can, like other professions or other um, just people out there who want to learn more about themselves and how they're showing up in the world?
Yeah, I think I would say the other professions that I found it to be useful for, I've done some first responders. So I
Mhm,
know you work with military.
mhm.
I think it relates to them where when you work with trauma or crisis, so probably nurses, doctors, and you just can't unsee things
I
and
gotcha.
you hold a higher level of trauma than other professions, that is who it would be for. And because it shows like this affects you. And in order to deal with burnout and not get burned out, like you have to look holistically at yourself. And so if you can't ignore one or two areas, you have to look holistically. Otherwise, burnout is probable.
Okay, so sounds like I get what you're saying about like the different types of jobs that people hold that, if you're seeing a lot of trauma, you're witnessing a lot of trauma, that's your job to deal with trauma, then this could definitely be something that would be helpful.
Another thing though, I do wanna say the layer of therapist, how that comes into play. So, for example, when I'm sitting with, my team and trying to make a decision, and one of the big things is, like, I had a team member come up and they were quitting, which is fine, they wanted to leave, but, um and they also wanted to take all the clients they had and start their own practice. I mean, that happens a lot in group practice, and so, as you're sitting there as a therapist, there is a different layers of therapist because we are trained to know like the triggers of others, the triggers of ourselves. It's almost like we have too much self-awareness and other awareness that it sometimes it causes like freeze moments or overwhelm or flooding.
Yeah.
And because we hold so much space for emotions. And so it's like, I know she's triggered, but I'm also triggered. So what do I do? Which hat do I put on? Do I put the boss hat on? Do I put the therapist hat on? Do I put the leader hat on or the friend hat? It was like too many hats and too many dual relationships coming into play. And that's the matrix. Like there's too many lines of responsibility that are overweaving. So I would say it is a little bit, it's not for every job. It's definitely the therapist because we're so in tune with others. And
Yeah.
so it is an extra layer of kind of saying we do look at the world differently. Like when you're in a group of friends or family that aren't therapists, how many of us say, "Oh, I'm seeing a deeper thing here," but they probably don't want to hear that.
Right.
Or we hold back.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's learning like how can we live a little more congruently in our world?
Yes. So I'm really curious about a situation like that where, you have the dual relationships happening and you're triggered and they're triggered. What do you, I guess it depends on the person and the relationship, like, because you are still the boss. You are still like they're coming in the context of I want to leave this position and take all my clients. Like, but yet at the same time, you're like, oh, I know so much about this person. I know what's the family, I know past their trauma of in this field. So like what did you do in that situation? Like what resources did you call in to make a
Ah.
decision on how to like show up in that moment?
Well, I think it's funny because in the moment, I tend to lean towards therapist, which is not always helpful when you're the CEO running the business. I wish I would grab the boss hat more,
Mm,
because therapist, I'm super understanding, I'm super nice, I'm super like
yeah.
empathetic, and sometimes that doesn't lead well to systems. So that's more of a long term. In the moment, learning to take a breath,
Hmm.
not always responding right away, like, knowing which way you lean,
Gotcha.
is gonna be helpful, but definitely doing what we tell our clients, like, how do you ground yourself? How do you take a breath? How do you know what's going on in your body? Like, notice those signs. That's in the moment. And there's some other ways that I talk about is surrounding yourself with community who understands. So for me, definitely getting on the phone with another group practice owner.
Mhm,
Now, with my husband, I was in the garage crying and
mhm.
hussing.
Right.
So there's all sorts of things, but it's knowing like where to show up and
Mhm.
how to show up. And then knowing that you're going to have to come back. This is one of many conversations. It's not just one conversation, but in the moment, take a breath and name all the hats. Like, don't respond right away. Take a moment because you might need to wait before you respond. And just being aware there are all these, naming that this is a lot of different, it's a matrix.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great advice. I mean, I think that's really wise, and that's, you like you said, go to your community, go to your husband, go to your friends. Like, you have to, because there's a lot of different parts of you that are being, involved and triggered, and you have to be aware of them. And then I totally get that. I'm just thinking of experiences or, past conversations I've had, and okay, how did I approach that? It professionally, and then how did I approach it personally? Because all of those things, I mean, I'm still human. It's like you can't, we're all human, of course, and we all are going to be affected, when we come up to a situation like that. So I think this is really great. I definitely want to get my hands on the therapist matrix and like work through it. I think this is so good. And it's a wonderful awareness and self-reflective tool. So thanks for offering that to our
Yeah.
listeners. Yeah, I appreciate it. So what else do you have going on? Because I know you got your podcast. What else do you offer therapists? Like, how else do you help?
Yeah. So I offer sacred space community groups, and those usually meet every other week for about 3 to 4 months. And I usually do one that's more focused on private practice, just single private practice. And then I have one for group practice owners. And we meet every other week. One week is consulting, where we have like a hot seat, or we do a lot of consulting and work on things they want to work on.
Mhm.
And then the other week is more engaging in spiritual practices. So that could be something like a divine reading or a guided meditation, depending on what the group is wanting. And I usually make sure the group, the energy and the level, like, what am I trying to say? They're all at the same place. So it's
Mhm.
not like someone just starting and then a 10-year veteran. So I kind of try to match where they're at. So I offer that. I also offer retreats called soul care retreats. And I've been doing them in Colorado, but I'm actually going to be traveling to do some. If they come to Colorado, though, we usually add a hike in there. We have massages. We do a train ride to the top of Pikes Peak Mountain. Great food, just a lot of downtime, but also some spiritual exercises in there to help people connect with themselves, with others, the divine.
Mhm.
So those are just some of the ways.
Nice, very cool. And so when you say you're gonna be traveling, can you share where you might be going? I'm curious.
Yes. Well, actually, I've had some group practice owners who want me to come in and do a soul care retreat for their team.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I will travel, like I'm going to Louisiana
Mhm,
for one of my good friends, and I'll be doing that. I think it's mid Louisiana. I'll be doing a soul care retreat for her.
mhm.
And then I had someone else, where were they? I think it was in the eastern area, and then one in Oregon. So, yeah, I'm kinda traveling around to do some retreats for the teams.
Oh, neat. That's really cool. I know a lot of
Yeah.
therapists that look to create additional streams of income are curious about like how to create a retreat. What does that look like? Do you have any thoughts for them on that?
Yeah, I think, it sounds a lot easier than it is.
I bet.
I would
Yeah.
s yeah. I would say the number one thing is build an audience. I
Mhm.
know that sounds weird, but you have to build an audience because you might be able to throw out and do one retreat, but if you wanna consistently do it, you need to start figuring out how to build an audience and what to offer them,
Yeah.
and to not necessarily say, "Hey, I'm gonna do this retreat," but who's coming? You need to know what your audience needs, wants, and what then they'll come.
Yeah.
Some people start it and then try to build an audience. I would say build an audience first and then ask them what they need,
Gotcha.
what they want, and build
Yeah.
it around that.
That's great advice. Where have you found to the best place for you to build an audience?
That's a great question. I don't know if I'm old school, but I'm really big on personal connections and networking. And so I think going to conferences, having lunches with people, but I mean, definitely social media, newsletters, email. Um, those are the right answers, but I still think it's about personal connection and showing up as yourself and really connecting. So getting in other groups and really connecting with people who are your people.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. You can't overlook the power of relationships and connections. And I think everybody wants to assume it's social media, but I think that's one part of it, but it's not. I mean, honestly, that's probably not where I've built the most connections, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I just find it really interesting when I ask that question to different therapists, like, how have you built, your audience? And it usually starts out with like, oh, networking and just talking with people, and it takes time. Everybody wants it to
Yes.
happen so fast and so quickly. Um, I mean, I think we all wish it did because then
Oh, yeah.
we all wish it would happen very much, much faster than it does. So, I appreciate that advice. So, well, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
I would say check out my podcast. If what I've said today resonates with people, like I have a lot more resources in my
Mhm,
podcast.
mhm,
I'm sure you do, like you do. I find that my real conversations with others like yourself are
mhm.
just so fun, and you just get so many nuggets out
Yeah.
of. I also That's how I build my audience too. I just love talking with people on the podcast. So I would say head over there. There's a lot of resources, and my website is going to have a lot of resources too.
Yeah. Well, I was just on it not too long ago. So definitely you've got resources, you've got your podcast, everything that you need is over on your website, which the website it's Faith Fringes. Is that right?
Well
No.
within the month, depending on when this
Okay.
goes live, it will be Soul Care for Therapists.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm
So,
slowly transferring it over.
right.
It takes a while to build a website.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I had that happen to me last year. Like, my website just went down and I had to rebuild from scratch. It was not,
No, why'd
no,
it go down? How does that
it
happen?
just, it was, I guess you call it like malware or spam. It was just crazy. It was
Oh,
so hard.
no.
Yeah, it was bad. But the good news is that, so my courses weren't linked up to my website, so I could still promote my courses because I have a learning management system. But it was, yeah, my website guy, he had to just like redo all of it, and which turned out to be actually a good thing because we kind of rebranded it a little bit, and I learned a lesson on like where to host and what it's worth to pay for good hosting and a good server, and just
Oh
having
my
everything.
gosh.
Yeah, it was bad. But anyway, I got through that. So you guys definitely check out Dawn's website, and we'll put the link to everything for her. So thanks so much for being here. It's just been great to
Yeah.
have you.
You too, thank you. I've totally enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is edited and engineered by Chelsea Weaver. If you're looking to start a podcast or ready to take the editing off of your plate, be sure to visit chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.